There we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
I just have a few updates for you guys. I'm sorry about the late notice here for if you live in Madison, we are going to go talk to Tammy Baldwin next Thursday at 2 o'clock, and then next Saturday at actually the Farmers Market, which would be great. So it's about 20,000 people. We'll be with Ho Chunk singers, Thundercloud singers, and Green Deer singers, and make more of a maybe, I don't know what we're going to call it yet, rally for wolves or something like that. It is next door to Tammy Baldwin's office, but we will speak to her. I did get some intel today about that bill, that there probably will not be a companion House bill. And so it's a little bit less worried, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't still hold her accountable, or it doesn't look good for the public. So we'll talk about that more, probably, well, definitely in the newsletter, but please go ahead and take a look at those talking points we worked on, and why we oppose this, and why Klobuchar does the same thing. I can tell you right now, she's running for re-election. I think she did this because to get Tiffany voters. You know, we definitely don't want Tiffany as a senator. That would be all dead wolves. So a lot going on there, but everybody just keep up your advocacy. I don't think it's as urgent as we thought that it was going to be. I don't think Chuck Schumer is going to put it on the floor, which is good news. And I can report to you, as again, I serve on the Council of Environmental Quality under Biden for the White House, and we have been promised that all endangered species, any single species bill will be vetoed. So less panic.
Yay!
So that's good news, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't hold her accountable. And she's not going to get what she's doing is setting very bad precedents, using really bad science and miseducating the public. So you can come.
Melissa?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yep, what were those two dates again? Was that this coming Thursday and Sunday?
Next Thursday and next Saturday. So I actually called you. I'll call you after the meeting.
All right, thank you.
Okay. But then I'm just going to turn it over to my new bestie, Suzanne, who lives in California, who has been
No, I live in Oregon.
Oregon, California, same difference. So somewhere out west. No, sorry about that. Who lives in Oregon, which you already said on here twice, so I apologize. But that has been working diligently and for free and volunteer, and doesn't met her through just our listserv, and it's another one of those things that we definitely want to unite across the country to do, and she is working really hard, and I'll let her tell you about it, but to trying to protect beavers on federal public lands. You may not know that we have quite a few federal public lands here in Wisconsin, a lot in Minnesota, but even really Necedah Wildlife Refuge. There, and trapping is allowed on all of our federal lands for beaver here in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, and in Illinois. So I know that Suzanne asked if she could be a little more anti-trapping, and I said I don't think that's going to be a problem. So, and I will let you try your new slides, try your new presentation out on us, and turn it over to you. Thanks, Suzanne.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let me just give you a brief update about who I am. So I got my PhD from the University of Oregon. I looked at how cattle, elk, and beavers alter streams. So I got that in 2003. Worked for the Forest Service, retired in 2018. And then in 2020 was the first time that I helped spearhead an effort in Oregon to try to close federally managed public lands in Oregon as an emergency climate change biodiversity measure. That was the whole goal. So we got together, I pulled together science, we got groups on board, scientists on board. We presented before the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they said they were going to vote on it. And the whole system, shall we just say, got hijacked by ODF&W. So they ended up not voting. So we went to Plan B, which was to submit a petition. And that required an entire summer of doing nothing but writing on my part, because it was under the Oregon Administrative Act. And so at that point, we were no longer asking that the commission make a decision to close, because in June of 2020, they could have closed all federally managed public lands in Oregon. They could have made that decision. They punted. So in November, we put a petition, and it was to ask them to initiate rulemaking under the Administrative Procedures Act. So all it meant is we want an open conversation. And they voted 5-1 no. Then they had a beaver management work group that completely got hijacked. It was supposed to talk about closing beavers on federally managed public lands. And there were groups on there that just never allowed that conversation to happen, and the commissioners allowed that to happen as well. There was an attempt in the state legislature in 2021 to ask the state legislature to make a legal change. It never got out of committee because the committee chair was told by ODF&W's director, everything's fine. And then in 2022, there was another effort before the commission where we said, hey, look, your language is different this time. We're asking for a closure. And we were invisible. And it was out of that comes this decision this thought that really the crisis is so much bigger than state. And so it was in getting to a meeting, Adam Bronstein of Western Watersheds Project, where we got to talking and I told him what I thought. And so that sort of started this partnership. I'm at this point taking a break from that effort because I need to get a bunch of other things done. But I'm still going to talk about it. Anyway, so that's my background. So I have a lot of field experience. And with that, I'm going to now share my screen and I'm going to give you a short presentation that I've pulled together. Just a minute.
Can I just briefly just pause right there? Because I just do want to tell everybody what's on here. I think you can, what you say is ODFW.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's just listed the same as Wisconsin DNR. And when she talks about our commissioners, it's the same as our Natural Resource Board. So I think in what she was saying, you can probably feel it's a lot of similarities between wolf policy and beaver policy or any wildlife species policy in that those commissions, those state-run commissions are run by the very minority of trappers, and they don't like to make rules. And that is actually what she's talking about of not making rulemaking is how we won our lawsuit against wolves. So that's a little bit, but I just wanted to catch everybody up so that the lingo all matched. All right, sorry, just wanted to make sure everybody was clear.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I'm so used to, thank you very much. One of the things that's been really great about this effort is that it has required that I expand beyond the West, because the West is my place of origin. It is my geography. So in sort of pulling this together and in working on the executive order, which I was the co-author and the science lead on the letter, it's really reminded me that the West isn't the only place out there, and that the issues in the West sometimes are not the issues elsewhere. So I've tried to incorporate that in this. And also, we're going to focus only on the lower 48 right now in our discussion. There's questions that are arising in terms of beaver expansion in Alaska and the Arctic. And, that could end up resulting in, Alaska, maybe yes, maybe no, being part of our request. Right now it is, but I want to stay focused on the lower 48. So here's the deal. The deal is we are going to have to partner with the wild if we're going to tackle the crises. And we're going to have to partner in the most interesting and creative ways with communities if we're going to be successful. And so what happened is that after sending the letter out and Wisconsin Wolves and Wildlife, did I get that right? Anyway, signed on to the letter.
Close enough.
Okay, signed on to the letter. And the letter was then sent to President Biden. Nothing much has happened, but there is conversations going on in the Council for Environmental Quality. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to get a lot of press. And myself and Dr. Bill Ripple have attempted to do several op-eds. And so far, we have not been accepted, which is interesting. Anyway, so on the 27th, the letter went to the president, and it asked for an executive order to close all federally managed public lands in the United States to beaver trapping and hunting. So the question becomes why? This is something we all know. The earth is in trouble and it's getting hotter. And this is my new most exciting thing. It's these warming stripes. So, the global temperature is getting warmer. And this is Wisconsin's climate stripes, warming stripes. And as you can see, Wisconsin is also getting warmer. And with that is going to come a huge amount of change. And the question is, how do we get our wild and human communities as prepared as possible for this change, which is unprecedented? We already know that with climate change, we find ourselves, depending on where we are in the United States, either no water, too much water, wildfire. So everybody is affected, and oftentimes they're affected in different ways. The magic of beavers is that they can assist in all of these ways. So why is a closure needed at all? First of all, beavers can help restore stream ecosystem health and create wetlands rapidly. Rapid is critical. They can do it at the landscape scale. So it's not like a beaver dam analog where you put in a couple. It's like they're constantly moving out there. And it can do that at little to no cost and bring billions of dollars in benefits, both social benefits and ecological benefits. Right now, a closure is needed because the numbers, distributions, and dispersals on federally managed public land is limited by trapping and hunting. And we'll talk about why that is the case. We have the climate change and biodiversity losses are increasing, and we need emergency action. And beaver are not a light switch. Recovery takes time, and we are running out of time. And so this idea of going state by state becomes a problem, as we'll see. So what we have here is that beavers are close-knit families, and at about 2 years old, they start to head out on their own. They go looking for mates, they start building habitat, and they start having families. But they can only do this if they survive to 2 years old and move on out. So here is a life table. It's a very simplified life table of if you had a single beaver colony and you start with how many over 10 years would that initial beaver colony potentially have? Now it's kind of like that whole feral cat. If you start with 2 cats, how many cats do you have in 10 years? The point of this is that over time, you start to get this exponential increase in beavers. As your mating pair has kits and they grow up and they disperse and they find mates and they have kits. So with time, you can get quite accelerated expansion if they survive. One of the challenges with beaver trapping is that the trapping season, depending on where you are, can last anywhere between 4 and 12 months, depending on the state. New Mexico and California are exceptions. Beaver are trapped in the winter. That means they're trapped during the pregnancy and the breeding season. Trapping is indiscriminate. It can take entire families. It can also take other species. That, as it pertains to beaver, it can take the entire family. It can take the breeding pair, and you don't know what you have. And once the beavers leave, what happens is the dams start to fail, and they're not there to be repaired. The ponds begin to drain, the habitat's lost, the stream temperatures rise, the flows become more variable, and a lot of the benefits that were achieved begin to fall apart. So why do people trap and hunt beavers? So on private city, county, and state lands, sometimes people kill beavers because beavers are causing problems where they live. They don't know that there are ways to work with beavers and that people can help. And that's where these incredible coexistence strategies come in. It's become increasingly well known that they work, they're proactive, they're longer term fixes. If beaver have moved into an area and you trap them out, another beaver will move into that area. It means the habitat works. So what you want is beaver who are territorial to establish a territory. You want to address the problem. Is it they're cutting down your trees? Is it that they're flooding your road or your ground? And you want to use these pro-existence strategies to allow the beaver to stick around or to create a condition perhaps where the beaver move on through. There are some things you can do without trapping them. And so you end up with benefits and you don't end up with this recurring cycle of beaver returning, needing to react. If in Oregon, one of the big concerns is hazelnut trees. So if you have beaver move in the dark of night and you wake up the next morning and you have 50 of your trees have been taken down, that is a big deal. So you don't want that happening over and over again. And that's why using coexistence strategies work. And they are cheaper in the long run. Now, on federally managed public lands, though, people kill beaver as a recreational activity. There are not these infrastructure conflicts. And they sometimes do it because they want to see about making some money. So let's talk about the value of a beaver pelt. In 2019, the average price was $12. In 1955, the average price was $12.78. Okay, I've got my citations down there. So if the 1995 price was to have kept up with inflation, the price of a beaver pelt in 2019 would have been $122. $12 in 2019 is the equivalent of $1.27 in 1955. In other words, this is not a money-making venture. This is a recreational activity. So federally managed public lands, it's a really different scenario than private lands in city, state, and county. And we're left with this decision, this choice that we have to make. You know, do we allow beavers to be trapped out to benefit a few for a recreational purpose, or do we insist that beaver be allowed to remain on these federally managed public lands and expand to benefit our wild and human communities? So is a beaver pelt of $12 worth the loss of fish and wildlife habitat, drought and flood mitigation, and abundant biodiversity? This essentially is the crux of the matter. We are talking a values call right now. This is not a science call. This is not an economics call. This is a social values decision. What is most important? So why an executive order? So we've talked about why we needed closure. Why an executive order? The scale of the crisis is enormous. It crosses state and international boundaries. State wildlife agencies are too focused on meeting the recreational wants of trappers and hunters, with the exception of California and New Mexico. And why is that? It's because trappers and hunters, through purchasing equipment via the Pittman-Robertson Act of 1937, and the licenses help fund state wildlife agencies. So hunters and trappers are their clients. That's who they care about. It doesn't matter what the mission statement says. It's about who helps pay their salaries. California was closed in 2019 via legislative action. New Mexico was closed in 2022 via legislative action. These take a lot of time. They're really energy intensive. And again, they do not tackle the scale of the crisis. So let's hear some maps just to get a sense of why climate change is not a state issue. As we can see from this drought map from 2022, drought is influencing huge portions of the United States. If we look at this North American migratory bird flyway, we see that the flyway crosses multiple states, both and international boundaries. This is the Klamath Basin, River Basin, a place where there is a lot of water conflicts right now. As you see, it's Oregon and it's California. When we talk about the Colorado River Basin, we're looking at multiple states and 2 countries. When we look at the Mississippi River Basin, again, we are looking at multiple states. And consequently, this idea that somehow we can go state by state as it applies to beaver doesn't make sense. In the West, you know, this was something that came out in 2021. Kate Brown was our governor in Oregon. We tried to get her attention on this beaver issue. She completely ignored us. But the West is on fire. So it's not even as if you've got localized fires anymore. With increased drought, not only drought in a given year, but drought over multiple years, the landscape overall is drying out. And as a result, we're getting these increased large-scale, high-intensity fires. So the next question, why the focus on federally managed public lands? Why did we narrow it down? These are our collective lands. They are lands that belong to all of us. In the West, they are large, continuous areas prone to wildfire and drought. There are thousands of miles of streams on public lands that are in very degraded conditions, and wetlands are limited. And we'll talk about the values of these wetlands shortly. There is limited infrastructure conflicts in comparison to state, county, city, and private lands. It is a major source of water and biodiversity. They're a major source of water and biodiversity strongholds. And many of the headwater streams are appropriate size for beaver dam building. And beaver dams are what beaver do that set in motion all these benefits. And they have some requirements. If the stream's too big, it just blows it out. So that first through fourth order, in other words, headwater streams or large streams that have side channels are where beaver will tend to be. So these tend to exist on our public lands. So here is a map showing public lands in the lower 48. You see that most of them are in the West. 92% of them are in the West. 8% are everybody else. And in your state, Wisconsin, you have 1.8 million acres, or 5.3% of your state is federally managed public lands. And as Melissa shared, you guys have a number of really important wildlife refuges. And those wildlife refuges are really important for migratory birds, as well as a lot of other species. The final thing that I think is really important, and this is where this request is challenging the status quo in particular. Can the federal government actually protect beavers? So there's a tendency to think that the states have jurisdiction over beavers. But in fact, Congress and multiple rulings by the Supreme Court have given the federal government the constitutional and statutory authority to manage fish and wildlife on federally managed public lands. And I've provided the citation, and if anybody you want to read the article, I'm happy to provide it. There was a response to this article and a response to the response. I talked to Martin, and he said the challenge to their paper was very weak. And so anybody who's interested, I'm happy to make those 3 papers available to Melissa. The answer is, can they? Yes. Can we? Yes, we can do it. Will the states want to relinquish that? No. Is it going to be easy? No. But it is essential that we begin to tackle the crisis at the scale that is appropriate. If you have a crisis that is crossing state lines, you must have an approach that also provides a uniform, consistent policy across state lines as well. Now, there's a couple things I really want to make clear. What is the goal of the ask? The goal of the ask is to give our wild and human communities the maximum edge possible as we enter into this time of increased uncertainty due to climate change. And it's big, and the uncertainty is great, and the social anxiety and the conflicts are rising. The goal is to slow the rate of biodiversity loss. It is to restore salmon, improve water quality and security, stream flows, honor tribal agreements, improve and expand fish and wildlife habitat, and instill hope and creativity. We have become so constipated. That is the only word that seems to come to mind when it comes to tackling the climate crisis. We are unable, our government seems unable to actually act, whether we're on the state level or the federal level. We need to break that. And when that happens, and we start to see the magic of what beaver can do, when communities begin to experience the benefits, what it does is it shakes loose this ability to be creative and look at other possibilities and be bold. So what goal of the ask is not? Okay, that was a terrible phrasing. Sorry about that. What is the ask not asking? That's not any better, but the goal of this is not anti-trapping. This is not an anti-trapping request, okay? It is a proactive step that must be taken if we are to rapidly restore stream ecosystems and help decrease climate impacts and biodiversity loss. It is to benefit all of us. It is not anti-trapping. And that is where groups have tended to focus. And they're doing that because what they're struggling with as human beings is the struggle of having to shift from the status quo to recognizing that they need to make this shift. And near the end of this talk, I'm going to suggest some things that we all need to do to make changes. And when some of these, you're going to find yourself equally resistant to change. Because it's easy to ask somebody else to give up something they enjoy doing. But we oftentimes struggle when it comes to us. But I want to make this clear. This is not anti-trapping. This is pro-survival. A place where oftentimes in this discussion about beaver trapping and is it needed, boils down to, there's a rabbit hole that I'm asking you to watch out for. There are 2 questions that are oftentimes asked. They have two answers that are different, and both of those answers are right. The first question, and this is the question the states ask, are there enough beaver to trap and hunt as a recreational activity on federally managed public lands? The answer is yes. Are there the question that we all are asking, are there enough beavers to restore thousands of miles of degraded stream, create millions of acres of wetlands, and expand quality fish and wildlife habitat on federally managed public lands, thereby giving many of our wild and human communities a major edge when it comes to climate change in the lower 48? The answer is a resounding no. Depending on the question asked, the answer is different. The states want to focus on the first question. We are focused on the second question. Do not let them get you hung up there. So I want to go back to this again, because again, it's the why of the ask. This is not an ask just because. It is a proactive, nature-based climate solution to increase severity and frequency of drought, wildfire, and flooding, declines in biodiversity, loss of fish and wildlife habitat, rising water conflicts, decreased water quality, less predictable stream flows, salmon declines, increased social anxiety and despair, and long overdue honoring of legal and moral obligations to tribal nations. That is why we are doing this. So when we talk about those obligations, let's keep in mind that once upon a time, North America was rich in abundance of cultures and wildlife and fish. And when Europeans came over, we altered that. And we have some huge obligations. And one of those obligations is to restore, on the West Coast where I am from, there's a big focus in terms of salmon. So this is a really important element. The other thing too is that this is one of the posts that went out during the petition effort, is that we all need rest stops, and migratory birds need beaver-created wetlands. As we have done agriculture and built towns, we have lost a lot of our wetlands. We need to restore them. Beavers can do that. So imagine in this landscape again, in the West, of having massive amounts of wetlands being restored. And those two incredible flyways, the Pacific Flyway and part of the Central Flyway. And then imagine, where you guys are, here we are, up in Wisconsin, and your area is becoming incredibly rich once again and providing these stopovers for migratory birds. It would be a huge gift to our wild neighbors. There's Wisconsin. Okay, so what is we're just going to run through some of these things. These are posts. I'm refreshing your mind. These posts are available. And if you want them to put on your Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram account, I will remake them available to Melissa. So fish need beavers. Many fish need beavers, the habitat that they create to survive and thrive. Okay, not every fish is going to benefit by beavers. Some fish do better in warm water, but many fish require their habitat. And beavers actually can help decrease stream temperatures, improve stream flows and channel complexity, and you've got more insects and vegetation, and so there's more food. So if you're going to restore a lot of native fish, you need to improve conditions. Beavers can help. Where you guys are, flooding's a big deal. Okay, it's going to be more frequent. What beavers can do in those headwater systems with that expansion of wetlands is they can trap some of that, store some of that water temporarily, and then the flooding impacts are downstream. Downstream are smaller. So it's a nature-based, cost-effective flood reduction strategy. Where I live, drought's a big deal, okay? And with drought comes a whole host of other issues pertaining to wildfire. But while beaver can help reduce flooding downstream, that same storage capacity means that it's putting water in the ground so that during those dry periods, you have a lot of groundwater that is providing water to the stream, and you have ponds continuing to contribute. So not only is protecting beavers a nature-based climate, nature-based cost-effective flooding mitigation strategy, it is also a drought mitigation strategy. Fire. This is a really big deal. And we've had them in Oregon, and there was a lot of dead wildlife and livestock. There was no place to go. And that's a really hard one. It's a hard one, however you feel about livestock grazing on public lands, to have another living being burned up in a fire or have their lungs scorched is something we would not wish on anyone. So what beaver dams and these wetlands create are safe zones. These are places where you can flee to for safety. And that means more wildlife and more livestock survive. And this is important. It also means these natural fire breaks, they may, as we get enough of them on the landscape, they may begin to alter some of the fire movements. After a fire, oftentimes there's a lot of erosion. That water comes off with sediment. The vegetation traps it, the ponds trap it, so you've got better water quality. There's less downstream flooding, and you've got better post-fire habitat. This is what happens. These are the things that happen. This isn't a photo that many of you have probably seen. This is just really gets at the heart of what it means in the midst of wildfire to have safe zones. So I just think it's an incredibly beautiful photo, and it speaks to the power of water and the power of beavers. Now let's talk about these wetlands. Carbon capture and storage, massive amounts. So this is the green, the light green is the meadows. Downstream there are these beaver dams. So the carbon is being stored largely in the subsurface, in the roots. So you've got 3 to 10 times more than a virgin forest soil. So if I had an acre, if I took an acre of soil in wetland and an acre of soil in a virgin forest, and I took the same volume, I've got 3 to 10 times more carbon being stored in that wetland. Okay. So in other words, it takes 3 to 10 times more acres for every acre of wetland. If I have a secondary forest, which is what a lot of our forests are, you know, the ratio is even bigger. And then a lot of our grasslands, many of which are pretty traumatized, I would say, you know, it might take 35 acres of a grassland, it may take 35 acres with, how do I say this? There's 35 times in a volume of soil in a grassland and the same volume in a wetland, there's 35 times, 7 to 35 times more carbon stored. In other words, these are big carbon storage sinks. And the carbon that is stored in these things can be there for 1,000 years plus, which is what we need when we're talking climate change, because we are in this for the long haul. So it is a nature-based carbon capture and storage response. And here's just an idea of giving you a sense of just the amount of roots that show up in the subsurface, and all of that is storing carbon. The beauty is that if you have private landowners and they allow beaver to come in and help raise the water table, they will also get an increased amount of carbon stored in the subsurface because the roots will be better. And that means that the water holding capacity of the soil is also greater. Can you guys hear my dog? Okay, good. He's howling in the
I
background.
can't hear your dog.
Okay, anyway.
My dogs are always barking during this thing, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Anyway, and so what you do is that this process that happens where you get rising water tables, increased roots, it enhances the water holding capacity of the soil because you've got more organic material. So if you're a farmer, if you're a rancher, what it means is that in the midst of a drought, you have better water holding capacity. And in the midst of a flood, you have, or a lot of water, your soil can soak up more. So it's beneficial in both ways. Farmers need water. They need good water quality and they need dependability. And protecting beavers in a way, therefore, is a long-term food production strategy. You can't grow food without water. We've gotten used to being able to turn on the tap and have water come out. In a lot of places, the source of that water is federally managed public lands. If you want that during the middle of a drought, then you're going to want beavers and their dams and their wetlands in the headwaters. So what we see is that as droughts, floods, wildfires are expanding, these are signs of climate change and highly damaged ecosystems. And so what beaver will do is that they will help repair these systems. And in the repairing of them, decrease impacts. But to do that, they have to expand and they have to be able to build and maintain habitat. I wanted to show you this one picture because oftentimes what you'll hear a lot is that, oh, it'll be decades out there, decades before it'll ever happen. So Maggie Creek is in Nevada, extremely dry. 1994, this picture, the red indicates riparian vegetation. You'll notice there's not a lot of red. By 2006, there is a whole lot of red. This is infrared, so that's all green. And it's all green because beavers moved in. Keep in mind, the time scale of change was 12 years. That's it, 12 years. And so their ability to affect rapid landscape change is incredibly great. And this is just a visual of Maggie Creek from the air. And so think about this, what it means to have water in this really dry landscape and what it means for the survival of migratory birds and fish and communities that depend on this. This is what's at stake. All of this, all these things we care about. So beavers can do great things if we let them, but what about us? What else can we do to support the efforts of beavers? We need to decrease our carbon emissions. This is a big one. And we can have all the wetlands in the world removing carbon from the atmosphere, but if we're still pumping carbon into the air, we're not going to get anywhere. So when you hear of opportunities to improve transportation quality, affordability, accessibility, and make them much more environmentally friendly, that is a big deal. Check your wallets. This to me has been kind of one of the aha moments for me. And if you have any one of these 4 credit cards, get rid of it. These are the 4 top fossil fuel banks in the world. And there's going to be a tendency not to want to get rid of your points and things like that. Just recognize those points are coming at an ecological cost to the planet. If you decide to get rid of your credit cards and you happen to have one of these, drop a short little note saying, you know, I can't have a card with a company that in fact is supporting fossil fuels and driving us to a ecological collapse. Here is where, for me, understanding and appreciate some of the challenges that a trapper will emotionally go through when saying you can't trap anymore. We have to stop recreationally flying. I know this is a tough one for many of us. It's a tough one for me. These are 2 brochures of places I would love to go to. I will never go to these unless we get the climate crisis cleaned up in the next 20 years. But that's the choice I'm making. As much as I want to see these places, I've chosen that I actually care about all of you and my community more. And so I'm not flying recreationally. Would I fly for health? Would I fly for a major family event? Probably. Is there never going to be any beaver trapping? No, there will be times when it has to happen. But we really have to reassess. We're asking beaver to carry a big weight. So we have to start making these changes too. And the other thing that I realized is this, is that in my making this choice to not do something that I really want to do, and as a retired individual was planning on doing, not only can I understand at least the emotional feeling that trappers have, but I also have some legitimacy when I say, you got to stop doing it. So here we go. Also, some other simple things. Spread the word about beavers as a nature-based climate solution on your Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts. I can certainly get you posts. Let your federal representatives know that protecting beavers is really important on public lands, that it will help with climate change, and it is cost-effective with billions of dollars in benefits. I highly recommend stop using Amazon. It's due to the consumerism, the amount of freight that is currently being flown, and because Amazon is a bad company and it doesn't support its workers. And what we discover as we work through this process, these things are all connected. As I mentioned before, support quality, accessible, affordable mass transportation, and then support efforts to coexist with beavers on state, city, county, and private lands. I'm a real Marvel fan. I love these. And I love the center one, which is the beaver being the mighty beaver. But the bottom line is there is no superhero. This is something that we all have to step up to the plate and do. And that every single action that we choose, every flight we do not take, every credit card that we cut up, every working with cities to get coexistence, planting in our gardens, what we plant, all of these things add up. And what people will try to tell us is that they are not significant, but it is the power of the cumulative effect. And that is what the pandemic taught me when the sky and the air and the water cleared. So these are great, but you know what? They're not going to show up. So we got to show up. This is a great drawing from a daughter of one of the Families for Climate out of Oregon. And it was one of the posts, why protect beavers? And here are some reasons. The truth is we all have our own reasons, and you're going to have your own personal ones. And that's it. So thank you very much. And I will unshare my screen and open myself up for questions.
First of all, that was great. I don't think you have anything to worry about. I thought that presentation was awesome.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about me flying or traveling because I'm poor, so I'm out. But anyway, I think I think we don't talk about what you say at the end enough in a lot of our presentations. So I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that, because that is something that we can do. But I'm just going to go through the chat here. There were so some questions. Okay. Variability in snowfall in the west and north, like this year's high snowfalls. The beaver ponds can help buffer snowmelt. Long-term decrease in beaver ponds and conservative in wilderness areas could cause increase in flooding downstream, and that's a huge economic impact.
Wait. Say that again. It was more, let's see. Oh, it was just a comment. Oh, right. It was a comment. Yeah, right on. Yes. Yeah.
Just going through some of these here. Who would like to have copies of somebody's barking dog? But yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think for us too, I'll get to Chris's question here in a minute, but I think that everyone on this call, we all started forming because of wolves here. And I think you can just see so many similarities between restoring large carnivores on the landscape and restoring beavers on the landscape. And how even wolves can help us combat climate change, even though they really think beavers are tasty. But, I think there's just so many similarities, and I think we can see. I was just happening to look up, Suzanne, when you were talking about it, and our trapping season for beavers is year-round.
Okay.
And we cannot move beavers to another place, and anyone can kill beavers on their property at any time. And our recreational trapping season is from October 1st all the way till the end of April. So
okay.
then I looked, because my exactly say it. Well, I hate his wildlife services there. I just said it in a not very nice way. But wildlife services took 3 times the number of beavers in Wisconsin than recreational trappers. So they took up to 7,000 beavers, and there's no way they took all of those on private lands, because wildlife services will not come out for you for private problems. So I was just wondering, maybe you could comment, like, I have tried this. I had a big fight here in Madison about this, and my biggest run up at I'm sure everybody that's around the Madison area or Dane County knows about Black Earth Creek was Trout Unlimited. And I had a hell of a fight that I did not expect them to have about beavers. Why are these fishermen who know that beavers help trout streams, why are they so adamant about removing beavers from trout streams? I don't get it.
Okay, so
that was kind of a long question. Sorry about that.
Okay, so you're talking about the brook trout up in your area.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, and Trout Unlimited is just like, they're adamant about just beaver removal all the time. And I'm like, but it cools the water and it provides insects, and trout like these ponds. So I don't understand why they're not listening to scientists like you, and why our agency is catering to Trout Unlimited, frankly, non-science, instead of hydrologists and biologists. I mean, I've been running the same thing with wolves and then carnivores, raccoons and everything, but this just seems like so obvious to me that why are they doing this?
Okay, so so there was a couple of papers that came out in 91, 92, and 2002 by Everett Avery, I think it was. And it was looking at, and I've had a chance to look at them quickly, two of them quickly only. So part of it is, okay, brook trout like cold streams. Some of the studies came out that beaver ponds resulted in warming downstream. Okay. So obviously that becomes a real concern. But when you read the paper, it's interesting because the first year it was warm, it was cooler, then it was warmer, or it was warmer, then it was cooler. Anyway, I think what you're looking at is, well, okay, part of it is I'm also confused. But I think that there's a couple things that happen. So when the timing, this is what I've started to think as I was reading those papers. When the papers were written, you were still probably getting a lot of erosion taking place.
A lot of water, the wildflowers we have on top of the, sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, you may have been still having a lot of erosion, which means your ponds were filling in fast. So your ponds were getting shallow. Okay. So it could have been that some of the results of what they found was in fact the result of ponds shallowing out because they were getting a lot of sediment filling in the ponds. So you have this thermal layer. Now, in my case here, we have a thermal layer, but if my pond is 2 feet deep, it's cold at the bottom.
Okay, gotcha.
So part of it's that. I think part of it is a mindset. What's interesting about the paper is that the results are not conclusive.
Okay.
And yet that is, so I can't speak a whole lot more until I actually spend some time looking at them. But I think that some of it has become habit. Some of it maybe I'm not fully clear about why either. So
I just feel like the what you were talking about, like the trappers and the fishermen. It's like you were showing on that thing, like only 12 years for that miraculous change. Like I feel like they can't just not fish for trout like 2 years just to wait it out. Like to me, it just seems fake. It just seems so selfish when they could. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. Chris.
It is, and I think it's something that those of you who are scientists, it's probably a good idea to read those papers and sort of see. Yeah. Okay, let me just go through this. I'm going to go through these chats so I can make sure. Okay.
Okay. I think Chris has his hand up here.
Okay, I do, but I want to just say, Fox Run Environmental, if you would post, if you would send me your email, if you put it in the chat box, I will make sure I send you posts. Okay, so if you just do that, that would be great. Chris, let me just see. Oh, wait, I want to just see these. So I'm going to do that. Let me just see. Okay. All right, let me just go through. Okay, sorry about the barking dog.
You're fired.
All right, Chris, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to go to Judy's question here. So Chris, go ahead.
So I had a couple thoughts. One was, the general thing with the warming of the water. It's, people are focusing on the short-term benefit versus the long-term goal. And, I think that's typical of everybody who's concerned about economic things, is that they look at the short-term benefit instead of the long-term benefit. And maybe you have warming in the short term, but it's more back, if you let it progress, it's more back to the normal, like pre-European settlement way of doing things, where the beavers kind of influence that whole ecosystem. And then, the really reason I raised my hand was because I was thinking about the Amazon comment that you had at the end. And granted, Amazon, it's a big corporation, it's evil, but I'm thinking about the economy of scale. And is it more beneficial to have a large corporation, delivering stuff and, consuming fossil fuels doing that, or having each person go out in their car to a local place and buying stuff, and they're everybody's burning fossil fuels doing that, and I don't know the answer. I'm just food for thought, about the whether it's better to have stuff brought to your house, or by one or two trucks, or everybody getting in their car and driving out to wherever they go to buy stuff. And I don't know the answer, and I don't know if anybody can ever come to that realistic conclusion on that, because of all the political stuff involved with that, the various points of view. But it's something to think about.
I guess I have some thoughts about that, though. I think it's like that attitude you were talking about the short term versus the long term in terms of the water, is when you go out and you buy local, there is a relationship that is formed, and those relationships actually are what hold communities together.
Sure.
And the other thing too is that when you go out and purchase, there is something, I just think we do less impulse purchasing than if we're sitting in front of our computers. And so and the other thing too is that it is not acceptable ever to treat people badly, to not give them health care, to drive them into the ground. And any company that's doing that has absolutely no interest in your well-being. I think that in my mind, I think that the beauty of buying locally is that you might find yourselves thinking, okay, do I really need that? Or maybe you do multiple errands at the same time. But I just do not think that a company that is that unkind to its people, with somebody who's got that much money, and that it's the wrong approach. So I guess I'm all about community, and community is what's going to be holding us together. And so I say, just a minute.
Sandra, if you're on and you wouldn't mind talking, I saw your question here. So you're part of the, looks like you're part of the Illinois Beaver Alliance. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking or not, but I would love to know more about that. So feel free to email, because we certainly work on connectivity and corridors in Illinois as well.
Sure. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, there you are. And you have a pony.
I completely agree with your point of view, Suzanne. I'm just, it just popped into my mind about the economy of scale, but I agree, community kind of trumps that, and the local impacts are much more important. And again, if you cater to a large corporation, they're solely focused on short-term gains. So, I mean,
okay,
just a thought I had, while I was listening to you about the fossil fuel part of it,
right?
But the community part of it kind of trumps that, I think.
Well, and we can always continue to work locally and nationally to improve our transportation systems. So, before we go, Sandra was potentially going to say something, but before I did, I wanted to get. Wait. Okay. Judy, I just wanted to do this. Will beavers be successful at restoring the landscape at the rate of current climate change? The answer to that question is, I do not know. If we don't stop trapping them, the answer is an absolute no. If we get in gear, the answer is they will be able to still make changes. At this point, it's about saving what we can. We're not turning back the clock. And so the fact is, okay, so I just want to say this. So I've been really studying, I'm writing a paper about all the studies I've seen in the world about what happens when you change trapping pressure. So beaver populations can expand really fast if they're already in play. So on federally managed public lands, there is definitely a lot of areas that they can move into. There probably might need to be some translocation, which has mixed success. The deal is, if we don't put them on the landscape, nothing's going to happen. If we put them on the landscape, we're kind of racing against the clock, but some places will be restored. And we just have to work with what we have. There is no...
After I put that comment in there, I immediately realized that this is why we have to act now, because the rate of climate change is, and you know, climate change has been talked about for so many years, and it's here now. It is here now, and this is why we have to make these changes right now, because it's not going to get any better without our help.
Yeah, and in the West, livestock grazing on public lands, as it's currently practiced, is a major problem.
Yeah, and everybody's stopping eating beef. All right, I'm just going to sum us real quick because I did want to hear what Sandra had to say, because I've never met Sandra before, and I've never heard of the Illinois Beaver Alliance. So maybe I thought, Sandra, you could tell us what you do in Illinois, and we can connect here in Wisconsin, and then connect with Suzanne out west and make it a whole national movement. That's the point.
Oh, that'd be fabulous.
Yeah,
Sure.
So, yeah, could you tell us a little bit
yeah,
about yourself?
Well, I can basically, how we started is that I'm here in Glenview, which is a suburb on the north side of Chicago. And back in, I believe, was it 2021? Some beavers had moved into this area of Glenview, these retention ponds where they took up residence. And of course, as beavers do, they started to chew down some of the trees. So the residents in the area who are part of a homeowners association didn't like that. And so, you know, this advocacy group got involved, as well as the village of Glenview and the homeowners association. And so we basically, after doing some research, we realized that the ponds actually did not belong to the homeowners association. They belonged to the village of Glenview. So we tried to work with them in planting decoy trees that regenerated quickly, that the beavers like willow. But ultimately, they did end up chewing some more bushes of some residents, and the village finally said, well, either you have to trap them or we will. And we know what that meant, because the whole original plan was to trap them using underwater traps, obviously, which would kill them, drown them, and kill them. So we were on the humane side, you know, advocating for them to live trap them. And so we were able to trap the breeding female, the kits from 2021 and the kits from 2022. Unfortunately, only 3 out of the 7 survived, but they are now on a private lands around by Starved Rock State Park in Illinois. You can look on the map where that is. And they're thriving there. They're often seen there, and it's good to know that, you know, they found other mates. They're thriving there. So basically here in Illinois, I mean, everything that was presented here as far as, you know, beavers being part of the equation, as far as slowing down climate change, being part of the solution, was all presented at, it was last year in Baltimore, Maryland, the Beaver Conference, and BeaverCon, what they called, which it goes on every 2 years. And by Dr. Emily Fairfax, how she presented the information and the statistics that, yes, I mean, you know, when beavers are present with the diverting of the water by the dams that they create, they provide more underground, you know, increase the water table underground, keeping roots moist and preventing a lot of these forest fires spreading as quickly as we've seen on the news. So our president, Rachel Siegel, she is out of the country right now, but she's on the River Council, you know, and in touch with actually J.B. Pritzker, our governor. And it's just, you know, good news to see that this is being taken seriously. This is, you know, the research that's being done is being taken into consideration as far as management of major river waterways and their tributaries. And we would just, you know, like to continue to connect and build a bigger network and just get more and more of the word out there about all of this information.
And I think that's wonderful. And yeah, you know, just to add on to you, Suzanne, I mean, I think absolutely federal public lands is a better shot. But I do think also, you know, we also try to say there are things you can do in your local community. One of the things that you can do is try to break the contract with Wildlife Services, like Madison, Wisconsin no longer has a contract with Wildlife Services. because you know, there are things called beaver deceivers. There's a lot of things that you can use. But you know, we had a similar situation, and I think at sometimes when we're talking about federal public lands, you're not dealing with the conflict of homeowners and things like that, because you know, there is, in this one particular case, I actually favored the lethal removal of this one beaver just because the people's, if the beaver chews down the tree on this property and it hits your neighbor's house, you're liable. So there's a lot of things going on with homeowners insurance and things like that. But they were able to work in other areas here in town. And more importantly, is that we got rid of Wildlife Services contract. And you know, we've all talked about Wildlife Services and the joy that they have of killing first, asking questions second. Like I said, when I just looked here, Wildlife Services is the biggest taker of beaver here in Wisconsin, and 2/3 of those beavers were taken on trout streams on public lands. So I don't think Wildlife Services should be spending our money on that, first of all. But I just want to thank you, Suzanne, and see if anybody else has any other questions. I think, you know.
I saw another one. I did
sure.
see another one. Okay, Kelly, could you please
Kelly,
go over the beaver increase? No, beaver don't increase carbon. They increase carbon storage. Sorry about that. So what beavers do in the building of dams and creating of wetlands is they create carbon storage. They create carbon storage zones. So they are capturing carbon out of the atmosphere and they are putting it in the ground. And that is what we want to do. And that's one of the incredible powers of wetlands, because they are so effective at capturing carbon and putting it in the ground. And that was what that 3 to 10 times more, if you had a volume of wetland soil and a volume of virgin soil, and they were the same, you would find that the soil and the wetlands was holding 3 to 10 times more stored carbon than the virgin soil. So even though you have a lot more forests and you have a lot more grasslands, these wetlands are very, very important, because what's great about them is that they are brand new carbon capture and storage areas coming online. Okay, we've lost them. So every time beavers create a brand new wetland, it's a brand new storage zone. And at that moment,
can we still go to Italy then?
No, you cannot. Yeah. I mean, I guess what I have to just say about flight is,
you're right.
I mean, and it's been a real tough one for me. And every time I hear somebody's going on a trip overseas, I have, it's hard, but you have to decide where you really stand on this climate issue. And it does mean we all have to make some choices. So, but maybe when I'm 86, maybe in 20 years. I can
Okay.
go.
So when I'm 29 and you're 86, we can go to Italy.
Okay. So right. Kelly, I hope I answered that question. So it wasn't that they increase carbon, is that they increase carbon capture and storage because they create those wetlands. Just a minute, I want to go through this. Let's see. I don't have a newsletter, no. But Fox Run Environmental, I can put you in touch with, because I'm taking a break from spearheading this effort till November, but I can put you in contact with, there's a Beaver Coalition that's sort of forming to see, okay, what are we going to do now as far as this next step? So I will email you and be in touch.
And I just want to tell you guys too that we do have kind of an expert here in Wisconsin, Bob Boucher, and he wasn't able to join today, but we're going to have him on again, and he runs the Beaver Institute here in Wisconsin and has a presentation that is very similar to Suzanne's. And I think this is a continuing conversation we can have.
Yeah, and his is great.
To work on another animal besides wolves.
Yeah, and Bob's is really great because it really gives the nuts and bolts of the flooding aspect in a very sort of personal way from where you guys are. By the way, the San Luis Obispo, California, you guys, the Beaver Brigade signed on to the letter to Biden, by the way, as did the Illinois Beaver Alliance, as did Melissa's group. Let's see.
And we did talk to Camilla Harris and when we were at the White House about this petition. So,
you did?
Yeah, we talked to her. So I know that they know that it exists. I can't tell you how far we're going to get on it, but
but the fact that they're hearing it is fantastic, you guys.
They know about it, and it's a big wish. See what
can you put that in the text, because I want to make sure our organization out here knows all about it. Maybe they already know all about it and I just have This is Jerry, the one in San Luis Obispo.
You guys signed on. You guys signed on.
Okay.
You did.
All right.
You did.
Okay. All right.
And what I was going to say is, okay, Christina, I'm going to go to you in a second, but I had to, one of the points that I didn't make, which I will add if I ever give this talk again, is protecting beavers is not a single issue. It is a multiple climate change response strategy. So when you're talking to the Council for Environmental Quality, you may hear Stephanie say, well, we're not doing single issues. It's not a single issue. It is a multiple issue. It addresses multiple issues. And so that becomes really important to drive home. It's not just about drought. So,
and I think, since I sit on that council, I think it's a very important that you definitely start saying that it's a nature-based solution to climate change.
To many things, not just drought, because yes, that would be great.
Yeah.
Christina.
And to make sure that we're making it nationwide as
yes.
well. Because, I think that's why, I'm there, is that they treat the Midwest a little like a flyover zone, and there's a lot of votes here. So we matter, and just to make sure that we matter.
That's great. Yeah, I'm not on I don't sit in on the council. I just have heard that's a statement that was made.
I just stamp your stuff and pass it on.
Okay. Hey, Christina, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, well, forgive me. I missed the first 10 minutes of the meeting, so maybe my question might have been answered then. With public lands being rolled back with every changing administration, how do we protect whatever beavers manage to get implemented or put onto the landscape in various states? Was that discussed at all? Am I missing something?
No, and that's a really good point. I guess it becomes yet another thing that we all have to be paying attention to, is this desire to take our public lands away and give them away. So protecting public lands and keeping them public is critical. So yeah, no, we didn't talk about that, but you're right. It's a really important thing. And because what we don't want to see is these large blocks of public land, or even the smaller refuges like in Wisconsin, being turned over, because we need every bit of ground that we can to become places for biodiversity and water and carbon capture and storage and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess we're going to have to just do our best to try to minimize the loss of public lands.
Oh, there go mine. Well, I'm going to go.
Okay.
Sorry, those are my dogs now. I'm going to go ahead and let you go, Suzanne. I just want to thank you so much for doing this. Go and take your well-deserved break. I'm without sounding condescending, very proud of you. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Oh, you're welcome.
And all of this, and all your efforts to save not only wildlife, but the climate. So,
and thank you guys for coming. Thanks for coming.
I think this
was great, Suzanne.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Everybody here that was trying to connect, I will print out this, and we will have a whole section in our newsletter coming out July 1st, all about what you can do and the next actions to take. And I will also put all of Suzanne's posts used for social media in our advocacy tools page. So I just want to thank you all again, and thank you, Suzanne. You did so good. You're gonna love watching yourself.
Okay, thanks so much. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate it.